All right. Hey, we're here. Cool.
We're here.
Oh my gosh, and the microphones are working. That's even the best part.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Uh,
We'll
I have to
wait for
take.
the customary chat to tell us everything sounds horrible first. But
Yeah. I got to to send it on Twitter. The whole thing.
the, the whole thing. Nice. Well, hello
Hey,
everyone.
it's Brian. Hello, folks.
This is cool and I usually hang out in these frames whenever we're
Yeah, this is our default. This is our evening chat. We could be playing StarCraft, pushing counters.
Yeah, I always put him in a nice frame. No, I'm so excited. Cole and I have been wanting to do this for like months, right?
Yeah, like it's been too long. Uh, well, we had planned on doing it earlier, but we wanted to wait till we had a little bit more to talk about. And then I'm actually, given everything that's happened the last few weeks, I'm so happy we waited.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we got plenty of we're juggling and spinning plates. There's lots of things happening. um
Yeah, this will be a strange stream because well, it's not strange. It's gonna be exciting, but also there's just so much. We have so much to talk
there's
about,
so
and
much to
we'll
talk
just
about.
everything on.
I feel like
Uh,
since we last talked with our like community with our backer, like John Company's out. It's done. Everyone has their copy. If you don't, I don't know how that happened.
yeah,
You should get a hold.
seriously.
You should get a hold of me. But like I we landed a big project call. It's now over. That was last year.
Yeah,
John
I
Company
got
is
I
in
got
this
greeted.
hands.
I got greeted the other day to a big crate of it that Drew sent to my house because I just needed some extra copies on hand. And there's nothing like carrying a crate of John Company, carrying a crate of anything you've worked on to make you think, oh yes, this heavy thing was the thing we made.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Lots of boxes. But Cole, if you're game, maybe let's jump right in and tell folks what's been on our minds.
Yeah. So let's do recap. So
Yeah,
it's always hard to say goodbye to a Kickstarter, right? Because you've had the updates, there's been a community, and a lot of those folks are going to be showing up next year, or if they're hopefully for the next project, but you're not sure. And so I always feel very hesitant about like writing like this is the final update. And in fact, we're not quite at the final John Company update, but like when we put this in an update sometime next week or later this week, I'll probably say like this is your second to last John Company update, everyone. Say your goodbyes, sign your yearbooks. We'll hopefully see you next time. Um, so since John Company fulfilled, so John Company's the final act of John Company on our end was crazy because we thought we were going to have it fulfilled like September. We thought it was going to be fulfilled like even on the early side. And we're feeling very, very good. And then just the usual supply chain stuff. It basically hit every delay in that last stage that it could hit.
yeah.
And then it
Like
happened to hit.
every step along the way.
Well, and then it happened to also hit our fulfillment partner when they were rolling out new software. So y'all might remember like the lost tracking numbers and the doubled copies and that. Thankfully, most of those are likely sorted by now. But it was just one of those moments where we kept wanting to talk about what we were working on, but we said like, okay, we're not talking about anything until this thing is fully closed down. And so we just took our time. And meanwhile, y'all have been playing John Company. It is wonderful to go to the Whirligig Discord and see so many games. It seems like at least once a week there's two or three or four games of John Company. We have seen, and I will post a link right now, just an invite to the Discord for anybody who wants to join the Discord and isn't in. This is the Whirligig Games and Friends Discord where we do a lot of our playtesting and organizing. It's just a great place to find players, especially if you like John Company, but you're not sure where to find a player. You want to just talk about any of these games or games that are like them. We've got a really wonderful community of players there, and whenever sometimes I'll have a publisher reach out and say, "Hey, I have a channel in the Discord?" And I always say, "Yes, of course you can have a channel." Like I love having a low key place for us to just sort of chit chat about these things.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that Drew and I mean, not the biggest thing, but one of the things that Drew and I have been doing is just watching everyone play John Company. And we also did something that we've never done before. Um, and we started the localization process
Oh yeah.
Right, which Drew, I don't think you even mentioned this in your notes. Drew sent me
No.
little notes for the talk, but I want to talk about because we didn't really talk about it that much in the Kickstarter. So usually, here's our rule. So Drew and I, you are looking at the whole of Whirligig right now. um, this is a small operation. My little office. I'm in a little attic of this room. I'm not going to move my camera because I'll mess up everything. But this is my little HQ. It's basically an old broom closet. Um, and in the corner, I have like a little printer and a paper cutter tucked in. And down here on the shelves, you can see like those are all the games that we've worked on, all the printings of Premiere and things. Um, we usually we don't do language localizations until we do another print run of the game or even another Kickstarter. So usually what this means is we wait 6 months and then we start working on language localization. We get all of our partners together, we figure out the proper rates with the factory, we get all the translations going, and then we try to time that with the next Kickstarter. That's what we did with Premiere.
Or
Now
next
this means,
printing, because you
or
can cover a lot of the, or like misspellings or errata, or like if there's always going to be a small percentage of like bits. And it's about, better serving it if we're lucky enough to do another print run, and especially pairing those print runs with language partners so that we can do the bulk component printing at the same time. But yeah, doing this at the exact same time.
yeah.
uh
So what we did this time. So the problem with that. So that's a good approach for us. It also means that the game is out for about 6 months before we even start really working on it, which means we can catch little errata points and things like that. But that means for the end user, someone who's like a French speaker, as a French speaking group, they're waiting an extra 18 months to play the game. And they're mostly waiting because one, it does help us with errata, and two, just because of our bandwidth. And John Company's files were a lot cleaner than Premiere's files. We've just gotten better at our work. And so Drew and I decided to do an experiment, and we did localization basically immediately. So right is basically as soon as we got the copy, as soon as we were into fulfillment, which basically, as fulfillment starts, this is actually, that's not even quite true. It was earlier than that. So as soon as it was off my desk, I took a month of not worrying about John Company, and then I started getting the files ready for language partners so they could start translation. So while everyone was worried about shipping, including us, we were also doubly worried because we were trying to coordinate the language print runs, which we're doing right now. And Drew, how many languages?
It's exciting. There's going to be a total of 7 languages for John
Yeah, seven
Company. I
languages.
mean,
So mostly European languages, with the exception of the
mhm,
Chinese
yeah.
printing. And if things go well, we'll do more languages. And so this meant that normally our like call. I mean, the time in which Drew would normally be like on a bike trip in California, or like us taking a little bit of time to rest. Instead, we have been doing these language localizations, which uh, it's mostly like managerial coordination work. Drew does a ton of it, and then I'm mostly just doing file support. Um, but it really did take a lot of time, and it meant that this year, I mean, 2022, this previous year was. I felt like you and I both put in more whirly gig hours this past year than any other year before.
Yeah,
We were
without a
we were
doubt.
at it.
Without a doubt.
I love. By the way, thank you so much for all these kind words in the chat. I just want to say, William Dalrymple does not have his copy yet. I sent an email to the Empire podcasting team right as their podcast was like exploding, and I bet it got lost.
Yeah,
So
we should prompt him again.
yeah, I'll prompt him again. We'll get it because I think now they have like an intern or something. So we are going to
Yes.
do our part. We're going to do our part to get it to them. Yes, there will be a video on demand of this chat on YouTube. And thank you for the many comments for those of you playing John Company who have played with us.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I
I
also
just
can't believe, I love that there's a watch party in the Discord right now that makes you so happy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Drew, you and I should be playing StarCraft or something. Do
Yeah,
something really
me too.
exciting. And I saw folks from the first Minnesota up there. I saw the report of the game y'all played last weekend. Looked fabulous. I'll have to crash your party someday and play. But yeah, so it's been busy. Now,
Yeah. Let's talk
um,
about this year.
let's talk about this year because here's the thing. I'm Gabby, and I'll just go talk about like little minutia forever. But there's actually like a bunch of things that we want to talk
Yeah.
about. But first, before we say that, we're going to talk about this year. We're going to talk about some operational stuff. We're going to talk about kind of how we're thinking of our jobs and the things that we have that we're looking forward to. We're going to talk about future projects. we are changing our approach a little bit, and we want to talk about why we're doing it and what that means for you all. It's all exciting stuff. There's going to be like, we're not like starting a crowdfunding campaign in a week or something. So
No,
don't, I
no,
just want
please
to temper,
temper those expectations.
temper
Yeah,
the expectations. I'm not going to like
yeah,
reveal a link. I want to get in the habit. Basically, Drew and I had a very funny moment. We had a funny conversation about a few days ago where we said in the back of our mind, we always think about Whirligig as like a little gig, like a little side hustle. And Drew told me, he prompted me, like yesterday or the day before, that it was his 3rd year anniversary
yeah.
of working full time at John Company. Whoa.
At John,
He wants to be a writer, man.
yeah,
No, so this is his 3rd year, his 3rd anniversary. So props to
feels like
Drew,
it.
but his 3rd year working full time for Whirligig, and he
Yeah,
and I kind of looked at each other and said, okay, we have always treated this job like we do every project as if we're like coming together to make an album. We make the album, it goes and sells, and then we don't worry about what's going to happen next. If we make another album, great. But Premier's sales have been so consistent, and John Company has done so well, and you are all so wonderful that you're forcing us to reckon with the fact that like this isn't just like a side hustle anymore. In an important way, like we want to be around for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, etc. And so that is necessitating some adjustments to like how we do our business. And one of those things is getting in the habit of talking to you all outside of the crowdfunding cycle.
yeah,
And so we want to do these talks once a year, maybe twice a year, where we just say like, hey, here's what happened last year. Let's talk about what's coming up the next year.
yeah,
So with all that said, Drew,
yeah.
let's
Okay.
talk about
I'll talk
let's
about the
talk about
less than fun things, and then we can get into projects that we're
fun
working
stuff.
on. This is fun stuff. No, so we got so we got news this year. After I would say our hands have been quite full, and we got news that our U.S. warehousing partner is closing their doors and wrapping up shop, and everyone that is working with them needs to find new partners to work with. I had I would say I have not I wasn't expecting this, but I have been like quoting out and I would say otherwise planning for this to happen maybe later this year or in the coming years. I wasn't expecting it to happen right now. So I would say I have been in the logistical throes of the first month of the year, unlike I've ever been before, which has been very exciting. But in the short, for all our backers and supporters, this means that we're moving to a new warehouse, new warehousing partners. It means that the store is going to go down for a while I manage some of these changes. It also means that we're at the precipice of having to exit a bunch of games from a warehouse. And in that process of moving these games out, I'm looking at having our games enter some inter-distribution for the first time. Now, that's been very different than how we've otherwise done crowdfunding. But if I'm going to be moving these games out, we're going to be trying doing a bit of an experimental run to see if they're going to be able to exist in places where they otherwise hadn't been designed or even had not designed, but been planned to ever go to, right? Traditional retail spaces.
So I want to take that. I'm gonna chunk that news. So one, we are talking about Funnigan. Funnigan has been generally a pretty good partner for us over the past few years. I've been, they've been pretty responsive. But the John Company fulfillment was tough, and I think part of that was staffing, part of that was their capacity, part of that was the new software. There's a lot going on, and we don't really know what happened, what was the straw that broke the camel's back. But we had already gotten to a spot where we thought we need to start looking for other fulfillment partners because we don't know if Funnigan's gonna be there for us. And then literally within weeks, they in fact aren't. So for in the short term, our stuff will still be on Funnigan's. We're still fulfilling through Funnigan, but know that we have found a new shipping partner, and there will be a closure period of a few weeks or a month or so, some point this year as we move. It'll be the first quarter, almost certainly, where we move our stuff to the new partner. There'll be disruption. Like this disruption of service will affect a lot of things, including replacement parts. Um, we have contingencies for all that stuff. It's just going to take a little bit of time to sort out, and we'll have to change our default support message and things like that while we transition. But one of the things that Drew mentioned is that we are looking at putting our games into distribution, which is something that we have been very wary of. I mean, I kind of the whole premise of our company is that we have to we are primarily a direct to customer, a direct to end user publisher. It frees our budgets up. It allows us to take on gigantic projects. I mean, basically, and when we show you guys the schedule and talk about the titles we're working on now, these are all titles that are benefiting dramatically from the our ability to just be a direct direct to consumer publisher.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who don't have access to Premiere who want access to it. And so we've tried to structure a distribution scheme that cuts out a lot of like kind of the icky online retailers and stuff like that, where we will make sure to like do what we can to protect the product, protect all of y'all. But also make it so that if a neighborhood game store, in St. Paul, the one down the street for me, if they want to get a copy of the game, they can get it. And so we're trying to basically ultimately improve our direct to customer support, improve our direct to retailer support, and also to start building access to distributors, so folks who don't traditionally have access to our games can get them. So this is a long-term thing, and we're also, this is an experiment.
Yeah, it could go belly up, and we realize that no, we actually love just crowdfunding and making our weird games every 2 years.
Yep. And that is like, we basically structured these things so that like, if it's not working and if we're unhappy with it, we'll just stop. Because we don't necessarily, we are so fortunate to be in a spot where we don't need it to work. This is just something that we're doing because it seems like it's the right decision for the game, especially Premiere, which has done so well over so long, and it's just time for it to get to a wider audience. And so we're going to try it out. We'll see how it goes. Let's go.
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, who knows in a way that Da Vinci, that would have been a straight joke a year ago. It's not as much of a joke anymore. Now they're not reaching out to me. I don't think it'd be a good fit for Barnes and Noble, but
as long as they don't go right to my garage, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
Please. So
keep
lots
the
of
games out of Drew's garage.
Lots of logistics that all get sorted out right now, which is thrilling. I love having to answer big questions in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, and all this is getting, I would say, complicated by the fact that Drew, you and your partner are expecting a kid.
Yes, we are.
In T-minus like 1 week.
Yes,
so
soon.
If you're wondering, like, why is the stream so polished? It's because all of Drew's nervous,
my manic energy of late night,
dad energy is being funneled into this endeavor. I remember when we were waiting in the days before Owen, my first son, was born. I taught myself JavaScript in 2 days and programmed like a little web app to play train games. And it was just because I just needed something to apply myself to. And I worked for, 16 hours on it. And then Katie went to labor and I said, okay, I can put away the childish things.
Yeah. So I'm trying to sort out this factory transition before I unplug for a little bit, is I guess also wrapped up in it all. So
yeah, because Drew will be obviously going on paternity leave. I mean, it was funny. Drew had to write me the message saying, "What's the Wehrlegig paternity leave policy?" And I said, "I don't know. Just go as long as you'd like." But more particularly, it means Drew will kind of be fully out of the office for at least a couple of weeks, and then he'll be in a part-time kind of role for a while, and then we'll kind of slowly ramp things up, which is fine, because with John Company fulfilled, the timing is actually kind of low. We got a little lucky on that, and I'm very busy with Whirligig stuff on the weekends right now, but it doesn't need to take away from Drew's time.
Yeah, we've the big eject button has been there on the counter, and I'm really happy that I've gotten a ton of important progress through this year. It makes me quite excited that I get to still think about games, and I'm so excited about the second half of this video because all of the other stuff has been taken care of before the baby comes. So I'm feeling great ahead of this call and during. So nice. Cool.
Should
we jump into games? we talk about these projects that we're
Let's
cooking on?
let's talk about games.
All
I'm just
right.
making sure that we got
All
everything
right, get
through.
ready. I'm about to make you
Let's talk about games. Let's
about to
talk
make you
about
real
games.
little. Oh my gosh, I made you small. Okay, there you
Okay.
go.
I have to remember the order in which my slides are in. I remember. Do I remember? I'm gonna open up my slides so I have them on my side. Because hilariously, this is one of the funniest live streams I've done because I can't see Drew at
Yeah.
all. Really.
Yeah.
It's
Projects
prod.
indeed.
There we go. Okay, so here's what's going on. So Drew, you're on. Hopefully, you're on the first slide. Hang at the first slide for a while. Or you're not on any. Whatever. However you want to do it. We don't even need to have the slides up right now. So Drew and I.
Cool. We should
I'm gonna
start.
gather myself.
Yeah,
I'm
gather
gonna
yourself. There's a lot to talk
There's
about.
there's so much to
There's
talk
so
about.
much to talk about. We should before we get into Sacred Band, which I can't wait to talk through. Cole and I have been thinking about the upcoming like project and shape of Whirligig. And we've been really trying to imagine what it is to bring on new voices and to share our platform with 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 new games from new creators. And I feel like that is a privilege that we've been able to foster a community that I love, and I love the games that we get to make with y'all. Um, but and I think Cole and I feel very similarly that we now have built some capacity to try to experiment on bringing new titles from first-time creators.
So I've been thinking a lot about I've just been thinking a lot about like what our role is and like what our role is in the larger ecosystem. And actually I will say shout out to Historicon and Harold Buchanan and like the broader historical games community. Because I feel like when I'm talking to like Kevin Bertram at Fort Circle or like any of the crew that we meet at, I get a sense of like, okay, how do I like fit in this puzzle? Because John Company, in important ways, is a game that Drew and I wanted to make for ourselves. I mean, the thing that I always tell people, I've told this on lots of streams, is it's the game that if I were like in the library at BGGCon, I want to find a copy of it and be like, ooh, yes, this is the one I've been wanting to play. And so they're always very personal, but I don't often reckon with the fact that like it's kind of about more than us. So what I have games that I'm working on, historical games that I'm working on. They take a long time to make, just a long time. And I've gotten as I've done more games, they take longer and longer. Um, I I just I really like taking my time and making sure that everything is kind of sitting properly. But as when I'm at Historicon at a table with GMT and other public Gene and other folks, and I just keep thinking like, okay, so we're all publishers also, and we work in historic games, and I'm so amazed by GMT's ability to juggle a lot of projects and teams and cultivate new talent. And then, kind of during the course of working on John Company, I was also serving on the board of the Zenobia Award, and just spent a lot of time thinking about like, well, what is our pipeline? And my general rule has always been that like Drew and I have been lucky to have a lot of success in this industry, and you always want to make sure that you're like putting down the ladder for the next person up or finding a way to make a second ladder. And so I thought about like, okay, when I first started, what happened? Well, I was lucky in that the publisher I was working with, Phil, he was really generous and was able to kind of give me a platform. And also, when he constructed the terms of our initial contracts, they were essentially licensing terms. I mean, this
Right.
is going to get like a little into the legal weeds, but I thought like how, I mean, the fact that Drew, that you've had this job for 3 years and that, we've been able to enjoy it, it exists because Phil said, you can license this game and after we print it, it goes back to you. And if you want to republish it in another way, you can just do it. And I thought, okay, so I feel very strongly about this. Like I want to find a way to give a place for new talent and even established designers who want to work in our form factor and with our kind of tools and communities to build something amazing. And then we get to be like the guardians of those
Yeah.
things. But if they want to take those things and use it as the seed of their own company, of their own career, great. And so Drew and I spent a lot of time this past year designing a sort of plan, which involves like a contract and really getting into the legal weeds. I won't go into that, but just spending a lot of time thinking about how do we design deals that respect the Creative Commons, that like continue the tradition of moving things, especially things that are often composed of assets in the public domain, to keep the whole process, the whole projects like in that domain, and also to find ways to shepherd new groups of designers in. So all of that was kind of like in our heads as we were going through last spring and into the summer and then into the fall, and just thinking about like, okay, I don't know how many projects I can personally juggle, but I do know that I think Whirligig is now at a spot where we can start doing things that aren't just things that Drew and I are initiating. Um, and we also got a pretty good sense of what we think makes our own games special, because I'll tell y'all, we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the current status and state of historical gaming. There are lots of publishers doing exceptional work. Drew and I have been playing and thinking about like the Levy and campaign games recently, and whenever I go through like one of Voco's playbooks, I'm always just impressed that like here's a publisher in GMT that is producing these like fabulous, just historical source books that have so much great information. And then, to see that same thing get developed and mimicked by what Kevin is doing at Fort Circle,
Right.
the
Yeah.
Votes for
Votes for
Women
Women.
production, right? We are getting reproductions of the New York Times cover page and historical documents. I'm thinking like, okay, this is amazing. This is, really advancing the state of the art of historical games. So we started thinking about what our competitive advantage was. And I love historical game companies because it's not cutthroat. It's like we all want historical games to be 10 times larger than they currently are, and there's lots of room for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought like, okay, well, Hollandspiel, and I love Amabel Mary's work. I mean, obviously, um, and but I think like they publish very particular kinds of games, a very limited form factor. They can handle certain kinds of productions and not other kinds of productions. They have a certain kind of audience, certain kind of international reach. And I thought about GMT and even what Kevin is doing with Fort Circle, and I started realizing that like, oh, we have like a niche. Like there are games that make sense for us that don't make sense for other publishers. And so I started thinking about the designs that I knew that were in progress, and the ones that I think we would be good caretakers of. And so part of that has to do with, um, are these designs where it would be helpful to have access to our testers and our development and Drew and I's, actual labor, but also, are these designs that would benefit from what we might call, and this is like a little vain maybe, but like a dramatic production, like a production that really like looks for unorthodox presentation, materials, art, all that kind of stuff. Because and GMT does really lovely productions, but also they have a lot of rules about how their productions have to be structured. However, we do fewer releases, and because of the strength of our audience, um, I'm hoping this is a big experiment. We can do something a little wilder. Like we can do cloth mats, we can do resin pieces because we're doing different kinds of production. So we want the games that we're going to be showing you are all games where part of the conversation that we've had with these designers are we've had conversations around what's the best version of the game, and my only rule is if you can fit our box form factor, you're good. And if you also, I don't just want to publish a hex encounter war game, because not that we would do a bad job of it, but there are better publishers who can do that kind of thing. But if you're making a historical game and you're like, yeah, I need there to be like 35 marbles and 6 colors, I'm like, ooh, all right, like that's kind of strange. That's something strange and intriguing, and I'm really interested in like the tactile nature of these productions. So all the games that we're going to be talking about, we'll probably talk a little bit about their physical productions and the things that we're thinking about. Um,
That's Cole. Thank you for stepping back and giving the important preface of this is why we're yeah this is why we're here and starting to talk about Sacred Band first. Is that
well,
fair?
yeah, and there's gonna be I'm gonna add two little notes, two little baby notes, and then we can get into it. So one. somebody should rescue Mystery Wizard from
Oh
GMT.
yeah, of course.
It's not us. It's not us, but someone should do it.
Yes, there is a
Um,
steward out there that is the right caretaker.
that is the perfect caretaker for Mystery Wizard. And then secondly, I want to just say a small word about. Well, I guess okay. So secondly is a two-part. There are two parts. Secondly A, secondly B. So secondly A is Drew and I are still sorting out the capacity. So we're thinking that we can probably run one crowdfunding event every 18 months to a year, maybe. I hope. Um, and I don't know if that's going to be too much or too little. But the way we're kind of structuring this is we're going to show you a lot of games. Some of them are at different levels of finish. All of them we have progressed with the knowledge that we would like to sign it, and the other party also wants to sign it. So both sides want it to happen, but we've only actually signed one of them officially, which we'll get to. That will be the last one we talk about. And then the second thing is this is an experiment. So I know I have a pretty good sense that if Drew and I work on a title and we bring it to Kickstarter or to BackerKit or to whatever crowdfunding platform we use, then I think it will do pretty well. We don't yet know how well a title will be when it comes, how well we'll be able to share the stage. Like I feel like we built a little stage together, all of us, everyone's watching the stream. We built a little stage, and I know it works for the stuff that I work on. I don't know if it's going to work for these. And so Drew and I have thresholds where as long as the titles perform okay, we can keep doing this. And we don't expect them to do as well as Premier or John Company, of course, but if it seems like we can't share the stage, then maybe I'll start coupling my own projects with the titles, or we'll rearrange the schedule, or we'll do different kinds of we'll have a different kind of business plan for it. So we're very flexible, and we're going to be working out the kinks and adapting this like over the next hopefully many years.
There will be kinks. This is the big experiment.
The big
and also
experiment.
this is also something for us to figure like to also for our own personal journey to figure like if we like this sort of work too.
Oh yeah, totally.
Because it is different, right? I think this is the sort of managerial development, big picture oversight that
Yeah, I mean,
is new territory for Wehrlegig.
Well, Drew, you and I have always had the thing where like every 6 months or something, we would talk and we'd say like, "Hey, should we like stop working together? Are we both happy?" And the answer has always been like, "Yeah, we're happy."
You good, bro?
Yeah, but we do have these moments where we're like,
Yeah.
"Do we close up shop? Is this enough?" Because we don't want to jeopardize our relationship at all, and the fact that we enjoy our work is such an important part in what makes the whole thing work. And so even throughout this process, there were times where it's like, "Oh, Drew, we're working on too many games. Maybe we should dial this down or dial it up or whatever." And so that has been part of the conversation, and we don't yet know what it is. But what we've decided is we want it public. We're kind of sick of like having coy secrets. We would much rather talk about all these things. And the last interruption I'll do before we start talking about the first game is that there will be on the Discord probably within a week some channels which we want anybody to feel free they can use, which include upcoming titles, general discussion, upcoming titles, like looking for players. We want to give some of these teams access to people who hang around the Wehrlegig Discord. And so, you might catch Drew or I just like in a random playtest with these games. You're welcome to join. And then as we sign games, we will create channels. And that way, like anybody who is on the Discord can sort of like see the company Slack in an important way. Because we have this, I'm trying, I mean, this is really an experiment. And this actually gets back to our belief in the Creative Commons and of just transparency, where we just want folks to see how we make these games because we think it makes the games better and it makes us work better. And I also think it's just very interesting. So there are no trade secrets here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about Sacred Band.
That's let's get into the first project. Again, I can't emphasize enough how much all of these are projects.
Oh yeah. Well, and Drew even said like, "Oh, well, we don't know if these are necessarily going to be the titles of the games." And so we thought about doing like Project: Sacred Band. And that seemed too corporate, so we backed off. Okay, so Sacred Band is a game by Taylor Schuss and Joe Schmidt, and this was a game that came to us very insistently. Taylor and Joe, I can't remember who was the first person who sent it to me, but they were like, "We really want you to look at this game," and I was like, "I don't know. It's Ancients, which I am personally interested in, but I don't think fits our brand so far. It's a co-op. It doesn't seem like it's right." And then I finally got around to playing it and found that it was very very compelling.
Yeah, I mean
And
it's the 150 pairs of male lovers. That's the Band of Thebes, and it's a two-player co-op war game. I mean, there's a lot that's really compelling about it.
it's a little it's like slightly deck buildy, slightly hand management, and it's entirely about. So here's where it got me. Um, so there are two things. Mechanically, is a great hook because I love co-ops, but I tend to prefer co-ops that deal in theory of mind, which is you need to think about what I'm thinking about, and then you have to imagine what I know in your mind. So Hanabi is one of my favorite co-ops because it is much more interested in questions of theory of mind than questions of like engine building. And Sacred Band basically is you're fighting and then you're trying to like blind bid match cards with your partner. So you're trying to like sync up with your partner to get combat bonuses, which felt very thematic, very immersive. And then the actual physical presentation, and we're not going to be sharing pictures of any of the games or anything here because all that stuff's going to change. But the physical presentation could be very striking. I mean, this is a game that begs for, cool clay pieces and a cloth map. Like there are a lot of interesting elements that we can use um, to tell the story of the game in terms of its physical presentation. And it just seemed like actually like maybe it's a great fit for the line. So we haven't signed it yet. And basically what we've done is Drew and I have been playing it. And then, back at Historicon, I wrote like a bunch of notes to the design team, and I'm just trying to be like a consultant, a distant collaborator.
At the very
To
least, we want this game to exist so bad. And
Yeah, we
I
do.
think that I really do think that we could be an incredible place for this game to be developed and published. And again, we'll put a question mark on this because we're not still sure if it's us or if we're going to, like, I don't know, what the shape of this project is. This game might need years of development to actually get it crystalline.
Right,
And
or it'll snap together quickly. I mean, that's one of the things about especially games of its scope because it is quite a bit lighter than anything I've worked on. And I think y'all will find in the games that we're working on right now that there's a big range of weights. And also, not everything we're working on we're even listing. So not not not,
oh,
not oh,
those
the
that's
secret
that's
menu.
years
It's the
ahead. It's
secret
the
menu.
Sacred
Yeah.
Band. Yeah, Sacred Band
Uh,
animal
yeah.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Sacred Band. Again, we're so excited. I'm so excited to see where the team takes it. It seems like it could be something really special, and if we don't do it, we hope someone else does, and we want
Yeah.
to lift it up.
Yeah. It's amazing. And
Cool.
I'm excited. Okay, next one, Cole. Let's talk about
Okay.
Zoe's Persuasion.
Persuasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Zoe's Persuasion. This was a game that I mean, I think like a lot of folks, I first read Dan Thoreau's review of it and was quite struck by it, especially because I'm very interested in matchmaking games and games that deal with social, what's the right word? It's like they're games about the social sphere that are actually about the social sphere. Because one of the things is when you look at games like Lords and Ladies or even the excellent Obsession, which is quite a fun game, um, they often are taking their theme secondarily and they're saying, look, I don't know how to do like a game about matchmaking in Victorian England in the case of Obsession. So what if I make a game that uses some of like some Euro techniques and some engine building and then we will paper it on. I think Obsession is actually a very well tuned and tailored and immersive game for a certain kind of experience. But I want to see a game engage with the social sphere and the materiality of the social sphere. So I read it and I thought, ooh, okay, Persuasion. And of course, it's about the sending of letters. And I'm a huge Austen reader, and I just thought about Emma and her trips to the post office and how important letters are to that whole milieu. And so Zoe's game, I think conceptually was incredibly striking. Dan was very, very interested in it. And in Zoe's case, the game, it's not done, but it's very, very fully realized. And so, you know, Drew and I played a little bit over over December. We were thinking about it back in November too, and working through it. And we're just sort of, I think there are kind of two questions outstanding for Persuasion. One of them is, um, what are ways that we can sharpen, simplify, just slightly tune the kind of core engine of the design and make it hum just a little bit better? And then, and this is the thing that I find very exciting, is that Persuasion was, it's a brilliant print and play game. In fact, folks can find it on print and play now, because it uses the material constraints of print and play. I mean, you make little stamps. You got to tuck them in the card sleeves. That anybody who's ever built a print and play has worked with card sleeves a bunch. And so, in my one of my first conversations with Zoe, I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, do we want like magnets? Do we want letters? Like, how do we get two pieces of paper to stick onto each other without being permanent? And we have all these ideas about like player mailboxes and how we're going to use the physical box and the way we want the things to pass around. That as we sort through those production innovations, that will then give us hopefully the development tools we need to finish sculpting the game. And it's that type of conversation where I'm like, I love GMT to death, but they wouldn't do that, which is fine because they publish 30 games a year. It's great, not 30, but a huge number of games every year. Whereas Persuasion is something that Drew and I can spend a lot of time and really think about, like, okay, what's the precise way that we can get across the physical presentation of this game to really land everything.
Yeah, and again, because Cole and I are entering this this highly experimental year plus, we are not approaching it with any scientific approach. We are starting a lot of let's see how this goes, with very little controls at all, because I mean this is both Sacred Band and Persuasion are lighter games, that are, I would say, just they're not as demanding as Pamir or John Company.
Yeah. Well, and actually, and we didn't really talk about this. Well, I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing this too is after working on John Company, I was so happy with how it worked out. But I told Drew, I was like, there were days we were working on John Company when I felt like I was out of spoons. It was just, I spent so long working on that. And so I said, what if the next year is mostly about helping other folks with their games and not trying to like push a giant rock up a hill or anything? And so I'm really looking forward to, like, I like the fact that I work, and I've talked about this before. Mostly Sunday is my Wehrlegig day. I work all day, almost all day on Sundays for Wehrlegig, and then in the evenings, definitely on Mondays, and just kind of throughout the evenings, I'll do Wehrlegig work. And I love the fact that like this Sunday, I'm going to be working on one game, and then I'll take my lunch break, and then I will work on another game in the afternoon. And I don't know how long the games are going to take to finish. And also I know that with Sacred Band, working on Sacred Band was, I wrote a long email 2 months ago, and I'm just keeping tabs on it, and I'm interested in how they're going to address some of the concerns, and that's me helping, and it's sort of fun to be entering maybe like a different stage of my creative life where I'm just trying to help folks, and so that excites me. Yeah. So anyway, the short on Persuasion, and we haven't really been talking about what these games are like. I mean, I guess we did a little bit. Persuasion is, I mean, it's kind of a matchmaking game, but I mean, there's a lot to say about it. It's a game kind of about gossip, and it works. It just works really beautifully. I think almost all the games that we're going to be showing have a kind of connection to the social sphere, because I feel like, oh yeah, these games actually do have a link to like language and sociality, and so yeah, I don't know, I think they all are kind of bound together. Okay, cool.
Okay,
so should we go to the next one?
Let's do it.
The next one's real wild.
Yeah,
okay, so this one deserves some explanation.
Yeah,
no
kidding. Yeah, there's lots of asterisks all over this project, but
1819 Singapore 1819. I realized I got the title backwards. It doesn't matter because we just had a conversation about how we might need a different title. It is 1819
Singapore, not the train.
Yeah, I know.
Game.
Yeah, everyone knows about the Singapore trains from 1819. No one needs to tell the story. Okay, so let's talk about this game. I found out about this game when I stumbled into, like many of you, the fake shut up and sit down review of a game that didn't exist about Empire. And I thought this was amazing. And the brainchild here is Sonny Liu, who put together with the staff of Mosquito Games this amazing art exhibit, a museum exhibit, where they commented, reflected on tropes of colonialism in games by building a game about colonialism, except it wasn't really a game, it was just a museum piece. Um, and I thought this was lovely, super interesting, and many of their staff are fans of our work, and we had corresponded with, and so it was I loved it. When I first saw those Singapore cards, I thought, boy, those look like Pax Premier cards. And then
Right.
when I found out that they had played, of course they had played Pax Premier and modeled it slightly on the game, I thought, well, that's just wonderful, and I love seeing that. Um, and then some years pass, and their team reached out to me and said, and actually it might have been Sen,
Yeah,
reached out to me.
or Scott, but probably Sen.
Yeah, yeah, I can't remember, but they basically said like, hey, they decided to actually make the game because they had such a response. There were so many people who signed up to the newsletter that they found themselves wanting to see if they could build something. And they wanted to show it to us and see what we thought. Now, I will say at this point, despite having been extremely impressed with the museum exhibit, I had no idea what to expect. When someone who's never built a game reaches out to me and says, I've spent all this time building a game, like literally there are sculpts for the miniatures and commissioned art, I always think, oh no, this person doesn't know what they're
Too
doing.
deep.
And they've spent a bunch of money probably, and it's not, there's no way it's going to be good. But I said, look, the theme is so interesting, and I was so struck by everything that I thought, of course, I'll sit down and play it. And it blew Drew and I away. We were walking around Gen Con because we had played it like just before, maybe.
I think that's
I
right.
think we were walking around Gen Con, and I remember saying like, nothing here is as interesting as
You
1819
can't say
Singapore.
that, but it's true. We were so
Well, I mean,
jazzed about this game.
for me, because I love historical games that approach problems, sometimes very old problems, in very new ways. And there was so much in this design that I just never seen before.
Yeah.
Like, and I like, Drew knows I love city builders, and they are the genre of game that like lets me down consistently. And I think it's SimCity's fault probably, but I mean, it's the same problem that Civ games have with Sid Meier's The Civilization. City games have with Will Wright's SimCity. Um, but
This game shares a lot of bones with Pax Pamir, also not just visually, but like there are tableau building mechanics
super, yep,
that are like very that feel very similar. But it has such an interesting way that it wants to talk about taxes and public works and populations that enable those cards to do those abilities.
yep.
Um, and it has its mechanical backbone is like so tied to the moment of like the nation building of Singapore in the 19th century that it's such an interesting thing to explore.
It has a great engagement with scale. I mean, in fact, I will say of all the games that we're working on, one of the things that I think is really dialed in, and this is just because I've been playing a lot of war games lately, like how do they approach the problem of scale, which is the agency of the player, how they navigate through the decision space. And Singapore, I felt like, oh, this is the perfect scope of a city builder where you really do get like the story of Singapore in the kind of long 19th century. And it's fascinating. Now, this project is really interesting because the design is super mature. It is very playable. But interestingly, it's being built by a team. And so one of the funny things, and this is something that Drew and I have talked about a lot with the crew at Mosquito Games, is they basically have like a staff. And I'm like, I don't really know how a contract works that makes sense because y'all are dividing the pie many ways. But we're going to do everything we can to make it work. And it's been a lot of fun to like make a design suggestion and then see it in the Singapore Slack, like go through the different people who are working on development, and then there'll be some new art that would come together. I'll see a new version of the board. They're like it's essentially like a little game company that the like we're trying to help by just giving access to audience and then also helping navigate like the final stages of development and of production.
And so the scale of this project could be, it feels like it still could be all over the place. It could be a Whirligig published title, Mosquito Games co-publication. There's a
Right.
lot of things. I mean, this could be the first title that they start a game company with, and
Right. So
we help reduce Risk.
and,
And
and this is where I was talking about, like, that ladder up where it's like, okay, what is the world where we are collaborating on essentially the first print run, and then if things take off, like, y'all go, and you can manage your own company. We don't need to do that. Or if they say, boy, that fulfillment side, all those emails with fun again, we don't want to do that. That's fine too, because we'll keep it in house.
yeah,
Um,
they don't have anyone that seems thrilled about the logistics side.
yeah, the marketing stuff's more fun. And it is for folks who might have followed the game back when it was a museum piece. What's worth noting about the museum piece is it wasn't a game. That was a museum piece, and this they have done a really tremendous reworking of the design at pretty much every level. And it is responsive and fast, and it is also, of all these titles, it's the one that is the most like my own work. It is so in some respects, it's the obvious one that we should be publishing because it is like Pamir as a city builder with a bunch of like it feels like a PAX game, um, and it is yeah, it's really incredible.
Yeah, cool.
There we go.
I'm I'm
Thank you,
pretty
Drew, for adding that permitted term. Yeah.
I'm
Oh, and thank you. And
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was just going to thank the person in the chat for posting the link to the Shove and Sit
Oh,
Down
awesome.
piece on it. No, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like a lot of the titles we've talked about, we have not finalized the contract. This is not 100%, but we really want to publish it, and the other party wants to publish it. And so before we did the stream, we made sure to talk to everyone and say, like, hey, we want to talk publicly about this stuff. And the reason we want to talk publicly is within a few weeks, there might be a little, hey, looking for a game, Singapore, or 1819 Singapore. Anybody want to play? And if you want to see what we're working on, you can hop right in the mix.
I love that Da Vinci said no one guessed that the next game they would publish is all of them. I'm sorry, I just read that now, and I think it's a treat. Yeah,
Well,
we got to
if
keep
this
you on your
seems
feet.
crazy, yeah, if this seems crazy, know that Drew and I have been literally doing it for a year. Like
Yeah.
we have not, we've been just working. A lot of these conversations are now months and months and months old. We've been having just a nice steady stream, trying to see what is even possible for us. And I don't know how many of these we are going to be able to publish and be able to publish soon, but we are actively working on them. And one thing about this industry is sometimes things happen fast, and we want to kind of make folks aware that, like, these things could start moving right along, and they are in fact moving right along. I mean, so far all the games that we've talked about, Drew, are all playable. They are like, if this was the only thing on my plate, we could build a crowdfunding campaign around any of these now. But because this is a part-time job for me, and because Drew's getting ready to have a kid, we are waiting until the games are at a much further state of finish before we get to the Kickstarter version. And actually, before we talk about the next thing, um, the John Company, I was looking at some of the early Kickstarter videos for John Company, which is a game that I feel like changed so much over the course of its year and a half of development post campaign. But when I listened to the rules video, I was like, oh, this was like actually pretty close to what the game ended up being. There's a lot of work on very, very small elements of the design. And our general plan is we want everything that we take to any kind of crowdfunding to be further along than John Company was, as far or farther along. And if they're not gigantic 10-year projects, they won't take, a year and a half of post campaign development.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fair. All right, let's talk about the next one, Cole.
Let's talk about it. So the one that people expected us to say about.
Yeah,
So
so
Infamous
what's it?
Traffic. We're working on it. Now, what do I say about Infamous Traffic? I'll say this. Drew visited this summer and we played it. And it was very interesting. It was the first time I had played Infamous Traffic in years. Traffic is a game I love. It get close to my heart, but it is a game that is always I've always had a weird feeling about it because I've always wanted to see what would happen if I explored it more.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna fix this second edition.
Oh, okay, fair.
Yeah, fixed live, fixed
Fix.
live.
Maybe I might
I
have to
did in
refresh
fact.
here.
So I have 3 copies of Infamous Traffic, and I broke they're all in shrink. They're like the last when Amabel did the end of the print run. She asked me if I wanted the last few copies, and I said yes, please. And so I broke the shrink on one of them. We laid it out on the board. Drew and I played it, and I was expecting. So here's the thing that happened when I played this game. I was expecting to hate it, and that's actually a good thing for me. If I want to work on a second edition, I usually have a play of it, and I'm like, ooh, this game bothers me. I don't like how it feels. I want to change all these obvious things. And playing, I think we played a four-handed game where each of us took 2 players,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you and I both had the feeling of wanting to dislike it and then being kind of like into it.
Yeah.
Um, and so
It was definitely a funny feeling, and I know that you and I both felt like the list that we walked into it, like wanting to like this is what we're looking out for, like got smaller or like it was taking. I just remember feeling pretty clear headed about how we would do development with that project, right? Um,
Yeah, no, I mean, I walked in with a real list of things that I thought were busted and wanted to fix, and then the list that I left with was completely different. So this is a game for folks who don't know. This is a game about the Opium Wars that covers the 1820s, 30s, and 40s. Is that right? Oh my gosh, I can't remember what the calendar is. It might be shifted back a bit. It covers the first and second Opium Wars with the Taiping Rebellion kind of like right in the background. About Chinese history, and it's a game that I made kind of in a weird period of my life. I was staying with some family for a summer while my son was waiting on surgery, and myself and so Drew and some of our dear friends were living in Chicago, and they were helping me work on it. And then I was near my youngest brother, who also had some of his high school friends kind of around, and we just those 2 groups essentially built Infamous Traffic. Um, and Infamous Traffic is a peculiar game because I wanted to make uh, essentially I was working on John Company, but I wanted to make a version of John Company that was just the Opium Wars. But then as I was working on it, I realized I actually wanted to make like not a negotiation game, a game of implicit negotiation. And so there are a lot of ideas bound up in how it works. So it is a game that is similar to John Company, but also completely different. Um, and I think there are a lot of big questions about the second edition and what it looks like. I like know what it looks like physically. I think that's the stuff that Drew, you and I, we didn't change our mind about at all. In terms of what we want the pieces to look like, the board presentation, things like that. I think all of that we both agree on. It's the small things about is there enough space. So basically the core problem in Infamous Traffic is that I think it's too brittle. I think that the game doesn't quite have the liquidity, the movement to let the players really converse with each other through the space of the game. Um, and I think it's super fixable. I think it's super not fixable, but I think it could be improved. And so that is the thing that I'm sorting out. So Infamous Traffic about the Opium Wars, because 1819 Singapore also deals with the Opium Wars. It's likely we print them both at the same time, so those projects might get like grouped together. Um, and or maybe we decide that we want to move Singapore with a different project. So there's a lot of different scenarios out here. But yeah, we are definitely doing traffic. For those of you worried about your bank account, don't. This is, I mean, you're looking at basically maybe 2 years of work here. So this is going to take a long time for us to do.
yeah,
You got lots of time to,
yeah.
sell Girl Scout cookies or
And
whatever you
those
need.
and the chit pulls could be such nice clacky pieces and a nice bag to pull them out of. There's so many fun production upgrades that would really be pretty clearly quality of life improvements, at least for me. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to work on this. Also, we're gonna take our time.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that we learned from John Company is we got to take our time. I mean, so and this is something that we didn't really talk about, but like Drew would come for a visit when we were working on Premiere, finishing Premiere, especially the second printing of the second edition. Drew would come for a visit, and we'd work on John Company for the weekend, and we would just throw it all away. We would work all weekend. We would build some harebrained thing, and then we'd say, this just doesn't feel right, and we would just
Yeah,
toss it all.
yeah, modular
We just
John
toss.
Company where the offices were tiles that you.
Oh my God. There's this crazy version of John Company where you like would add these hex tiles that were the offices so the company could like snake and adapt. It was nonsense. What probably had happened is Drew and I had like just played Con for like the 30th time. And we were like, what if we do an abstract representation of the company's organization? Anyway, I'm so happy with how it landed. Also, there's a bunch of cool scholarship on the Opium Wars that I haven't read yet. So I think Imperial Twilight it hadn't been written when I did the first edition, so I'm actually excited to go into a research phase. Yeah, so that is all Infamous Traffic stuff. It is it exists in my head. It is something that this weekend I'm going to be spending a couple hours working on thinking through some traffic problems. Also, there's some really wonderful local players of Infamous Traffic who really like the game in the first Minnesota and around thereabouts who I want to talk about the second edition with, who have probably played it more than I have. Okay.
Cool. Do you want to talk about the last project that we've been working on, the one that's been taking up most of our time, the one that we have been probably cooking just maybe for the longest out of all of these, honestly?
Yeah. But before you do that, I'm going to interrupt you just to answer Lily's question, which is about publishing an opium game in China.
Right.
That is in fact a big concern. It's probably why we'll have to bundle Infamous Traffic with 1819 Singapore if we end up doing both of them. We are talking to factories in China. We have some contacts at factories in Spain and some other places where we would be potentially doing it. So we are going into it knowing that it might be difficult, which is also important. Okay, so let's talk about the last one.
Okay. We are doing it.
We're doing it. Y'all knew. Yeah. Those of you who knew.
We've been cooking on Molly.
We're doing Joe Kelly's wonderful, brilliant Molly House. This is the one we've signed. So of all the designs, this is the one that is signed. And sorry, this is a dangerous thing for me to be in the Google Slides. Molly House is signed. We've got all the terms set up. I know how the physical presentation is going to look. I've been on such a journey with this game. So Joe first showed me the game shortly after they started it. It was a Zenobia game, and I was in Joe's mentor pod where I helped them and a couple other designers work on their titles. And that's always an interesting experience, helping someone with a design, especially at very, very early stages. And one of the things that most impressed me with Joe's design is the design. What's the right way to put it? I really admired the fact. I mean, so okay, here's what I saw in it. Most of the time when I'm working with a newer designer, they will adhere very tightly to the core of their design. Let's say they got a good dice rolling mechanism working. They will just grab onto it. And so everything else about the design will be in trouble, and they'll say, no, that's got to keep the dice mechanism. That's the heart of the design. And every version of Molly House I played was different. I mean, sometimes radically different. But they had the same heart. They had the same core music. You could hear the melody. And I thought, okay, Joe knows the story. They know the story that they want to tell. And they are searching for the right mechanical framework to tell the story. And so I have played probably a dozen different versions of this game. And every one of them has been very different. I mean, sometimes there were hidden traitors. Sometimes there weren't. And sometimes it was kind of a dice game. And sometimes it was a card game. And sometimes it was a bag pull game. And as we went through the process, I kept asking Joe, like, is this the game you want it to be? Because if it's not, just change it. Just change it. And after the Zenobia Award ended, the whole process ended, because I was careful. I didn't want to sign anybody I was mentoring, and I didn't want to put them in a tricky position. But after it was over, I said, "All right, Joe, I really like the game. I really like the theme. I don't know if the current mechanical manifestation of the game, like the game that was a finalist for the Zenobia Award, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's the right version of the game. But if you want to go on this journey with me, let's do this kind of old development trick where we, I always call it like passing the boulder. This is something that I used to do with Phil and Matt when we were working on Premiere and Greenland and things, where I'd say like, okay, the ball's in, you've got the boulder, push it, do whatever you want with it, and then when you feel like you don't know how to move the boulder, let someone else try to move the boulder. And so over the past 6 months, 8 months, Joe and I and Drew have just been passing the boulder. And we've been trying different things. And we'd say, okay, we're going to work on a bunch of stuff. And sometimes I'll make a crazy version of Molly House and I'll show it to Joe and I'll say, Joe, I hate all this. And Joe will say, yep, none of this is working. And then they'll take it for a while and they'll build something and I'll say, this isn't it either. And we were very unsure if we were going to be able to make this game work. And then Joe showed us a version in the fall that synthesized all of these long-standing problems really beautifully. And I thought, oh, I can see it now. And it was weird because on the granular level, there were problems. Like the turn structure wasn't working, and there were like playabilities and flow, like really kind of like basic
Red
design
flags,
problems.
yeah.
Yeah, red flags. The kind of thing that would frustrate and stop a new designer who's like, I'm not having fun playtesting, so I'm going to stop working. And Joe had found this amazing way to jump ahead of that and say, no, here are the systems hanging in their proper balance. And it somehow found a way to see beyond the like cruft. And I thought, okay, this could be it. And so I asked for the boulder back and I said, Joe, let me clean up the little stuff, the obvious stuff. And so then I pushed on the design for a while. And then a few weeks ago, Drew and I presented the new design to Joe, and Joe said, "Yes, this is Molly House. This is all working together." That wasn't precisely their words, but like they were into it. And suddenly I felt like, okay, let's, we're gonna get the paperwork signed. Let's start getting this moving. Because guess what? We have a bunch of art we want to commission. And where am I going to find good artists? I'm going to go to flipping Twitter and I'm going to say, hey, we want to find artists, queer artists who want to work in 18th century style woodcuts. We want to find a sculptor to help us with some of the pieces. And so we have a really lovely an idea for the physical presentation of the game. And the actual design itself has been so much fun to work on. I mean, Drew knows this better than anyone. It has just been taking over my free time. Like I will get home and I'll be like, oh, Drew, I did a bunch of Molly House work. I've got all these ideas for arranging these systems.
Don't tell the Leader
And
Games folks, but that there's a corner of your brain that Molly House has been living in.
it's just humming. It's like humming on like the deep subconscious level. But what will happen is like this weekend, I can't wait for Sunday to roll around because I'm giving most of my day to just work on Molly House. It's like the thing I want to be working on in my spare time.
And and again, with this game and with all these other games, these are just like stories that Cole and I keep on feeling. If we don't do it, is it going to find the right steward? And are these stories going to be told in the tabletop space? And we keep on thinking and coming back to, I think we're probably the best fit, and we're the best people to make these games come to life. In their best way possible.
At least right now. And one of the things I love about this, like, so for example, there's a world. I mean, one can imagine a crowdfunding campaign that's like Zoe's Persuasion, Taylor and Joe's Sacred Band, and Joe's Molly House, and it's like this is the like queer histories trifecta. Awesome. And we are happy to shepherd that. And then if they say, hey, we want to form our own publisher to do these games in the future, I say, awesome. That's great. Like, of course, it's wonderful. And we just get to feel, honored that that they were able to, that they could trust us with their work for that short period. So, these are all games that I love. I mean, and we've played a lot of really cool stuff this past year. I've been so impressed with the ingenuity of the designers who are working right now. But these are all games that when I played, I thought, I really want this to exist. And the one that killed me, actually, I'll dial things back a second to Persuasion, is The first time I played Persuasion, all I thought to myself was, there are so many bad ways to produce this game. I really want to produce it well. And I
Yeah.
feel that way about every title where I look at something like Molly House and I think about like the version that Joe presented to the Zenobia Award, a very good version of
Publishable.
the game. Publishable, totally publishable. And I made sure that Joe knew that. I said, look, your design is completely publishable right now. If you are just interested in getting that design credit and moving on to the next project, my God, I will connect you with half a dozen publishers who can publish this. But I think your game could be twice as good. And so one of the things that I always tell, like the one piece of advice I always tell designers who are starting out, which is it's unpopular advice, which is just treat your work really seriously and try to make the best thing possible. Because the fact that a game happens at all is a minor miracle. Like any number of things could happen that could stop a game from happening. And so if you get the opportunity to make something, uh, take it so seriously. This is like the most careful, like fragile creature. Like demand everything of it and make it really special. And so when I told it to Joe, I mean, I was basically saying, hey, that award-winning design you just made, do you want to rebuild it from scratch? Um, and they said, and I think to Joe's credit, they said, yes, let's spend another 8 months working on it. And I hope that y'all think that it's worth it. I think you will. I mean, it's really remarkable. Yeah. Anyway, that's what we're working on. Now I'm going to give a couple small kind of closing points, Drew.
Yeah, I think that's
And
fair.
then
There's I still think that we are indeed working on everything that could have maybe been rumored or had any sort of postulation behind it. It's There's just various levels of burners happening
yep.
right now.
And I mean, basically, what we're doing here is like this is the equivalent of our P500. We're saying publicly, hey, we want these games to happen. We are pursuing them. We think they're ready to be talked about. They are at different levels of finish. They're not ready for testing, but like this is our way of saying, okay, here we go. Now, here's what I'll say. Uh, Over the next week or so, there'll be some more channels in the Wehrlegig and Friends Discord, and I will repost that link for anyone who hasn't joined it. We will also be posting a little. We will be posting this stream on the Kickstarter to tell other folks that we're working on it, and we will be using our Twitter a little bit more publicly. Like for instance, I have not been posting about any of the Molly House stuff I've been working on because I didn't want to spoil it. I also didn't want to like hurt Joe's chances with a different publisher if they wanted to take the design elsewhere. Now I feel like if Drew and I spend like an afternoon playing Singapore, we can tweet about it. We can talk about it. We can show people the work that we've already been doing.
Yep.
Um,
Or we might use this channel and do some more spontaneous live streams and show off
yep.
like more
You built all these
development.
assets, Drew.
Might as well use them.
Yeah, yeah. You know, some Sunday if I'm just like cooking on Molly House, maybe I'll just live stream. Anybody wants to come hang out with me? I mean, people who are in our like friends Discord that plays games on Sundays, I just get on the Discord and stream my screen and just quietly work. And sometimes people come hang out and we'll have like study hall together. Um, you know, I want to just say that generally. I also want to say there are other games. Believe it or not, there are other games that we're not talking about. And we're not talking about them because we might be still trying to help them get to a different publisher. It might be because it's early in the process. It might be because we've already spent 75 minutes in the stream and we didn't have any more time.
Yeah. Or
So
that we want to do it. It's just going to take like 4 years to do.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a couple projects we're working on that are so large that they're just going to take a while to realize. And you know, when we do the 2024 like look ahead, maybe we'll start talking about them. But my general, I just want this to be the initiation of this new phase where maybe I do start talking about one of those projects. And it doesn't have to be a big secret. We can just be like, you know, you're watching the stream of me work, and we're just talking about games together, and I say like, oh yeah, I'm going to work on the board for this game. And you're like, oh shoot, I didn't know they were working on that. It's like, well, we're working on a lot of stuff. I don't know if it's going to happen
Right.
because fundamentally, I have an amount of bandwidth that I feel comfortable with giving to Whirligig. Drew's got an amount of bandwidth. we are trying to figure out what the limits of that is, the limits of our bandwidths are, but we're sorting it out together. If we have to work slow, I don't mind, because every game that I've had to delay and spend extra time on, I've always been so happy that we delayed. I've never regretted it. In terms of the timeline on these games, these are games that, some of these might find crowdfunding this year. We're hoping to do a BackerKit BackerKit crowdfunding campaign sometime later in the year. At the earliest,
Right.
that's late spring, early summer, but I don't know. And BackerKit will be an experiment. And if BackerKit doesn't work very well, then we will go back to Kickstarter, and we're going to try to find the best platform.
Yeah.
Because we want to do
I
right by
really
these
like
games.
remaining fluid and responsive to the games, to the creators, and to honestly to our community about the best like projects to work on. And I'm really excited for post paternity. I'm really excited for post paternity when I can really figure out
Here's the thing:
what things
paternity doesn't end though.
Wait, what? What? I don't have leave forever? No. I'm pretty excited.
After that baby arrives, it stays.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Better. Let's do it, Cole. I'm thrilled. This is going to be a big year.
Yeah.
I'm on so many
excited.
different fronts. But also, you and I are just so excited to work more openly about all these different projects.
I have been wanting to. I have so many like Twitter threads about Molly House that I've been resisting writing, and I'm like, there's just so much to talk about. It is. I will say, for my like small contribution to the design, it is so fun to be thinking about hidden trader mechanisms in ways that feel fresh and interesting in this year of our Lord 2023. And it just does such interesting things with the form. I love the design to death. I can't wait to work on it more. Okay, so one small note, a big thank you to little Blakey Worley for helping Drew set up this amazing stream. My goodness, it looks so good.
There's more Whirlies, and the youngest brother did help me. So thank you, Blake.
Yeah, he a real hero. And Drew, amazing. This live stream's coming to you from Bloomington, Indiana, because my poor attic internet could not possibly host it. And Drew really did all the work here. I showed up.
You showed up. You are perfect, Cole. Thank you for again. Just keep on cruising on arcs, Cole. We're all so excited for it.
Yeah, that's wait till I drop that on. That's next week. We'll talk about that later.
All right. And again, you know where you can find us online. We're ready and available until I'm not. And then you can bother Cole. Yeah, but yeah, we'll be back, and I'll be honestly, it's I'm going to be adjusting with all of the newness of next year. New warehouse, new games, new factory, new baby. So yeah,
Ride it.
Let's do it.
It's I'm listening to a Minnesota NPR series about winter sports, and they were like, someone learned how to dog sled, and they said the one thing you have to remember is you have to hold on to the sled. And I was like, that's my new sign off. Hold on to the sled, everybody. Just hold on.
Amazing. Okay. That'll be it for us. Anything else?
All right. Take care, everyone. No, that's it. Good night. Take care. And we'll talk to you all soon.
All right. Bye, all.